And we're live. Hi, my name is Alan Miller, and I'd like to welcome you to the Cloudbakers OnAir podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss all things Google Cloud. For today's episode specifically, we're going to take a deep dive into the journey organizations take as they transition to public cloud. And alongside me today, I have Cloudbakers Chief Technology Officer, Leonard. Eric, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you and gain some of your insights as you've done this from both a consultant standpoint as well as from a practitioner standpoint. So before we dive in, I'd like for you to introduce yourself and provide a little bit more of a background.
Hey, Alan, thanks. Absolutely. So my career started in a crazy period of luck, right? At the beginning of client server and doing unbelievably cool multimedia capabilities at Accenture, where I got really connected to artificial intelligence and using computers and technology to learn. My passion has always been imagine myself as a teacher and an educator. And so it was an incredibly fortunate place to start a career. I've also got a strong entrepreneurial spirit, and in having that, I was able to be in that group and help grow a practice focused on advanced simulation AI capabilities into tens of millions of dollars of a new practice for Accenture. Right at the point as that was taking off and maturing, I kind of picked my head up and said, where else can I add value in this world? And right at that point, there was an opportunity to join a not-for-profit in Chicago focused on giving access to technology careers to individuals who did not have a chance to go to college and complete college. And so I spent the next 15 years as a practitioner combining my passion for technology and education. And in the course of that, I actually met the Cloudbakers team via Twitter. I was looking for a cloud systems integrator, and I got DM'd right back again saying, hey, we're a company that's right around the corner from you. Why don't we have a conversation? Fast forward a number of years, I joined as a CTO to help Cloudbakers focus on moving from a G Suite focused organization to now also including GCP and delivering infrastructure and data services to clients and customers.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Well, great. Let's go ahead and dive in. And Eric, you had a recent blog post, and I believe it was titled Google Cloud, Helping Us Think About Infrastructure in a New Way. And in that blog, you brought up the AWS or Azure cloud business model and how it might not be for everyone. Is that something that you would be able to elaborate on a little bit?
Absolutely. And this comes from a conversation I had with one of my original friends at Accenture who was working for AWS. We were on a flight back from San Francisco, and we were debating the difference between AWS and GCP. And we were across the aisle, and everybody around us was disappointed that we were talking for an entire 6-hour flight. But that said, his point, and this struck me remarkably, he's like, Google will never beat AWS because AWS knows how to sell VMs. That's all we do. That's what our primary business model is. We do not care about selling and enabling customers to reduce their spend or even improve their infrastructure. What we want and what we care about is selling virtual machines. And what was powerful to me about that is how Azure has literally copied that exact business model. If you look at architecture diagrams about how they think about any kind of platform as a service, under the hood, it is really just spinning up a whole bunch of virtual machines that you need to now manage. And with Azure and Microsoft, that's literally been their business model from the start. It's selling server licenses. And that's what they know. That's what they know how to sell. That's what their customers know how to buy. That's not cloud. That is simply moving from hardware-based costs to a CapEx expense to an operating expense, paying and renting those computers in AWS or Azure. Google has parity with those capabilities if that's what you want to take as your first step in a cloud journey and moving out of a data center into renting space, if you will. But that is not the end game of moving to the cloud. So that's number one, just understanding where AWS and Azure are coming from. They are not in it to be with you as a journey to taking advantage of scalability, burst, and managed services. They are in the game to sell you more and more virtual machines. And they might wrap it with nice kits and tools that allow you to make that easier to provision. But at the end of the day, what you are buying is just virtual machine after virtual machine. Google is coming from the world of solving massive horizontal scaling problems for running Google search. And they've been doing that for a very long time. And they came at that problem from a first principles. How do we solve this problem of the world's information growing every day exponentially in such a way that it's not possible to solve that search engine problem with virtual machines or adding more memory or adding more capabilities to any given server. Or vertical scaling is how it's known. You can only solve that problem by coming at and figuring out how to get horizontal scaling. And that construct of we're going after a horizontally scalable problem where we can literally, for cheap, we can grow computing power and capabilities to index all of the world's information in real time, all the time, and never go down, is the infrastructure that Google has now productized and sells as platform as a service. And those two could not be more different from a customer value standpoint long-term as you rethink what your business needs to be doing and how fast it needs to respond to customers' needs and your business needs. And most importantly, to get out of the business of maintaining and patching operating systems. We shouldn't be doing that as IT professionals. We should be thinking about higher level things where it allows us to add value to customers faster.
That's some great insight, Eric. And I think sometimes it is easy to forget that this problem, as you said, Google has already solved for both in the consumer space and now is able to bring this to enterprise. But I have to ask, I think some of the scaling can be achieved through Kubernetes, right? And both Azure and AWS offer that as a service. And of course, this is Kubernetes is a next generation approach to container-based applications. So aside from originally being created by Google internally, why would organizations choose Google Kubernetes engine over Amazon Elastic Kubernetes service or Azure Kubernetes service?
Great question. So number one, most importantly, experience and the negative experience of like stuff, scraping your knees, kicking your toe, all of the things that happen when you're using and adopting a new technology. They matter a lot. And Google is the only company on earth that's been running containers for 10 years internally, doing that at scale for their own business, internal business processes. And they have been able to take that and productize it. It is only because of the attraction of Kubernetes as a solution that AWS and Azure were forced kicking and screaming to move in that direction. They offer up, the blueprint. They follow, the standards that are shown. They've got all of the components for the control plane, et cetera. But at the end of the day, Google is the one who created it. They've got 10 years of experience doing it, running it, and have that fully embraced. While Azure and AWS may offer it, like I said before, since it's not core to their business model, they want to sell you VMs. They're thinking more about how does Kubernetes provision pods and more VMs. They're not actually worried about solving really important business challenges like Google is with Antho and Service Mesh. This is a brand new product that's worth looking at. Under the hood is Istio Service Mesh, which Anthos is a managed version of that. And again, it gets back to a platform as a service versus infrastructure as a service. Antho Service Mesh allows you to deploy Kubernetes in multiple regions without very little overhead and very little administration. And what that means is now if a region goes down, your cluster can be automatically hot in 2 different regions running because the Antho Service Mesh sits on top of it and makes that transition seamlessly. And it's actually load balancing between those regions all the time. So if you have an over amount of traffic in one, you're going to get equal, it's going to load balance that across multiple regions. That is the holy grail, and it has been the holy grail of computing for as long as we've been doing computing, to get yourself out of the risk of a regional disaster and succumbing to that. And how do you do disaster recovery? How do you do hot infrastructure without it costing you 2x the original cost of your infrastructure? So yes, AWS and Azure offer Kubernetes. I'm arguing strongly that it's not central to their business, so they're not creating the value-added capabilities like Antho Service Mesh on top of it that truly unlock the value and the potential of it.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So switching gears here a little bit, one of the things we've seen across many industries is the need to digitally transform, and that's in order to create new revenue streams and service offerings. Do you have a few examples of how someone can produce new revenue streams and service offerings through Google Cloud?
This has been something that's been talked about for a long time. The idea of opening up your business processes through APIs. And historically, companies did try to take advantage. As soon as we had service-oriented architectures and web services and SOAP and all that, companies were trying to do this. What's different and changed today is twofold. Number one, the low cost and speed at which you can create an API that is configurable with security and keys for your customers to engage with your business processes online. One example there is a financial services company who is able to charge their customers for the use of an API instead of the GUI, or actually it's not instead of, it's in addition to the GUI that allows that business process to continue. So an order is initiated from their customer through the API that gets all the baseline information in, and then it's managed in the back and forth it takes to go through that whole transaction through a GUI. That saves for each individual order, it saves at least an hour of data entry time for that customer. And that creates real value when you're talking about scale. And so they're able to charge their customers for that service and the ability to improve performance. This is a middle market company. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars to implement this, not hundreds or seven figures to implement it. Second example is machine learning capabilities that are unbelievably accessible today. Again, these are things that historically were only for the very largest of enterprises. Today, they're available at the corporate market and mid-market. This is a semiconductor company that is using machine learning capabilities to create a base trained model for doing vision detection. And then they're able to give that model as a starting point to their customers to then train semiconductor models using their own data. And so every one of their customers has different use cases depending on whether it's something to detect red light traffic violations, to security cameras, to you name it. Every one of those has different data sets that they need to fine tune and make that training model from a generic one down to a specific use case. That is something that's now accessible for an extraordinarily achievable price, and they can charge their customers for that as well. So this is now a revenue generator, where historically they were just producing semiconductors for customers. Now they're able to produce semiconductors with value-added machine learning capabilities on top. Third example is a CPG, consumer packaged goods data provider, where they are able to deploy a brand new service for consumer packaged goods companies who have lots of images, copyrighted product images out on the web. And a lot of that gets pirated and used in fraudulent storefronts. And in some cases, there's certainly copyright infringements, but in some cases, it's actually product fraud, where they're selling things that look like the original product, but it's actually not. And they're able to deploy at scale a system that monitors the internet every night for their customers' images being misused in ways, in contexts and websites that are not authorized to do so. That's again a value-added service in an existing data model where they've got relationships with these CPG customers to take it in a new direction.
Wow, those are some great examples. And I guess that maybe an obligatory question here, given the unprecedented times that we're in right now, is, how has that approach positioned companies to survive and maybe even thrive post-pandemic?
So particularly in that first example, where we're talking order processing and efficiency, there are many economists believe that even in a post-pandemic world, we are going to be forced to reduce the cost of transaction processing. Automation has to happen because demand levels are going to be lower for an extended period of time. And as a result, there's an incredible amount of cost pressure coming at companies to reduce that transaction processing cost for each individual interaction. That first one, the motivation for our customer's customer is exactly that point. They're trying to get that cost transaction processing down. They're trying to do more with less. They're getting ready for the fact that this is a changed economy, and the economics underlying their business model have changed forever.
Perfect. Now let's continue the conversation with Leonard, Cloudbakers Chief Technology Officer. And let's go ahead and focus on hybrid cloud for a moment. So as we know, the majority of workloads, Eric, are still running on-prem or in a co-location site. One very popular option for many organizations is hybrid cloud. Can you explain what hybrid cloud means to Cloudbakers and how we're helping organizations launch this strategy?
Yes, one of the most formidable moments in my career in the last 3 years was what I got to Cloudbakers. We were doing advanced technology in Google Cloud, machine learning, and I was super excited about all the platform as a service capabilities. And I was on an escalator at a networking event with a woman, a senior IT person at one of the airlines. And I was explaining to her all my passion about this. And she kind of looked at me and kind of dismissed. She's like, the cloud is just another data center. And I was just like, it's completely defeated. Like, what do you mean? It's not just, you know, and I didn't even go there, but I took it to heart. And interestingly enough, that kicked off a series of 5 projects that we've done in the last year, where larger companies in particular wanted to engage Google Cloud and Cloudbakers to help them get there, to literally think of Google Cloud as just another data center. It is, and what they mean, what that comment means is the network design and the security perimeter around Google that Google lets you build allows companies of all sizes to think of Google Cloud as just another data center. And it's that process of getting that connected, in having your security team and networking team all the way trained up on how to think of and manage Google Cloud infrastructure securely and with speed. That's what is the enabling capability of a hybrid cloud. The second thing that's really important and a differentiator for Google is that because of their global fiber network, more than any other cloud provider by millions of miles, is we can run all traffic privately. So many companies, for regulatory purposes and personal preference, don't want to route API calls and other call communication to the cloud or between cloud capabilities over the public internet. And the other 2 cloud providers do that every single time. Within Google, you can route all traffic on the private Google IP space, and you can do that globally. That is an incredible capability for customers who are very security conscious around how their workloads are going to run, and they want to think of their cloud as just another data center to get started.
That makes a lot of sense. And how would Cloudbakers help, our customers go from zero to a cloud hero?
I love that. So number one, it's about thinking about your strategy and the workloads that you run and where you run them. And quite often there's a lot that you have in place that you have optimized for and tuned over time. Old working batch processing. The servers have plenty of room. They're not being overutilized. They're new enough. Don't even think about them. Like, keep them in your data center. That's not something that needs to be a high priority action item. Servers that are running out of space or regularly out of space, or maybe the hardware is end of life and you're making a decision, should I buy a new server to run that on or not? That's a perfect candidate to move the VMs that are on that server over to the cloud as a first step. Another wave to be thinking about is your legacy ERP systems. Google, more than any of the other cloud providers, is investing in bare metal solutions that allow you to move old IBM, DB2, Infor type ERP systems, and Oracle even, to inside of the Google Cloud infrastructure. Once you've got it there, now you can start to have high-speed interactions between your legacy systems and modern platform as a service capabilities. The thing I like to start every customer out with is moving their databases to the cloud as fast as possible. There is nothing more frustrating than trying to size a database server, and that problem is taken away when you move to Google's managed database server capability. You're never going to run out of space again on a database. You're never going to run out of CPU capability. The auto scaling ability of Cloud SQL is incredible. Similarly with data warehouse. Data warehouse historically is something you run out of space. You have to size way bigger than you need. BigQuery is going to be there. You could, as soon as you've got your hybrid cloud infrastructure in place, you can write loaders that put everything in every old system into BigQuery. Storage is super cheap. You can start getting value out of that old data. Next is like security SIEMs. This is legacy technology. We've spent a lot of money historically on building out these capabilities on-prem with the cloud and limitless storage and cloud storage for super cheap object lifecycle management, so you can move it to colder and colder storage based on the age of that information from a regulatory compliance standpoint. Definitely a phenomenal capability that also sets the stage for you to pursue ISO certification in a way that you wouldn't have been able to on a cost-effective basis in the past. So those are just a few examples of use cases that we help customers think about and prioritize what's going to add the most business value and how do we unlock that value for the cloud.
Okay, yeah, but Eric, that sounds a little bit academic. What's the business case of spending time designing a hybrid cloud infrastructure? Wouldn't I just want to choose one or the other?
That's hysterical. That's like asking for the business case 10 years ago for an IT team to plan out the air conditioning needs of their data center. It is very hard to run a data center properly if you haven't thought through security access, who's going to get access to that data center, how's it going to stay cool efficiently and cost effectively. These are IT related, low cost, but high impact IT projects that you can get done quickly. And that enables, having that paved road, if you will, to the cloud, enables the business to move much faster and more securely to meet customers' needs. So this is an enabling project. There is no value of setting up a hybrid cloud infrastructure in its own right, just like there was no value in setting up a data center in its own right. It's not until you start moving work into that data center, moving that work into the cloud, that you can now take advantage of all that the cloud has to offer. So the ROI is really measured in how much faster the business can move, where they can, 3 months from now, how much faster are they going to be able to move? How much better are they going to be able to scale up and down their infrastructure costs to match revenues and expenses? And that's really what this is about from a financial standpoint. Back to Anthos, as we discussed earlier, the hybrid infrastructure is going to enable you to have all kinds of interesting use cases you haven't been able to achieve before. So in factories, companies all over the world right now are moving edge computing into their factories on Kubernetes in a hybrid cloud environment so they can do machine monitoring and predictive maintenance. Unbelievable value there. Telcos historically were restricted from having compute located at the nodes because they had to have the full VM stack and the licenses that went along with it. Totally not scalable, never actually deployed. Now they're running Anthos at every single node in their infrastructure. Healthcare, being able to put compute in the hospital in a way that's maintainable and connected back to the cloud for secure, completely private, completely HIPAA compliant computing and data capabilities that were never possible before. All of that is enabled by a hybrid cloud infrastructure with Anthos at the core.
And my takeaway there is that it probably isn't the best idea to just set up a data center and plug it into the public internet, maybe without all the security permissions, the access permissions, firewalls, things like that, right? Having that blueprint and putting the time in up front may save you some headaches on the back end. Is that fair?
Yeah. Ironically, all 5 examples that we've had in the last year doing this all came from other public clouds where the team had actually done exactly that. They had gone out, started turning stuff on in AWS or Azure, made a complete mess, and the security team got word of it and they shut it all down. And so not only did it not happen, it slowed down every one of the business's plans for getting capabilities on the cloud because they didn't start thoughtfully with a good plan and a good security network infrastructure in place.
And I know the thoughtful design you were just speaking to there, Eric, is a lot of what you and your engineers spend time, working with our clients and our prospective clients on the strategy for the move to Google Cloud. And one of our the ethos that we have as a company in Cloudbakers here is what we call a design, build, run. And you always want to be able to make sure you have the proper design in place before we flip to production. And then we're also able to support ongoing. So I guess with that, that we're out of time for today. Thanks for your expertise and insight again, Eric. And until next time.